Hello there and welcome into another edition of the JMac podcast. Today, another edition of POTUS Did What? And this is a big one because it really determines how our president feels about members of the military. You've heard about it. Screaming banner headlines, reports that President Trump said that he didn't want to go and see a veterans cemetery because he didn't want to see a bunch of losers and suckers. This happened several years ago, and he is now being called under the carpet to determine whether or not this really happened or not. So I know you've probably already decided. A lot of people have. But I want you to take a minute, stand back, hear what I have to say, hear the steps that I'm going to go through here to determine if this really happened before you come to any conclusions. Now, the first thing that you need to know is, of course, the president and the White House are denying these allegations.
And especially to me, because I've done more for the military than almost anybody else.
The Atlantic reporting is based on 4 cowardly anonymous sources who probably do not even exist. Meanwhile, within hours, 10 sources, 10, went on the record debunking these lies.
I'm willing to swear on anything that I never said that about our fallen heroes. There is nobody that respects them more. So I just think it's a horrible, horrible thing.
All right, so let's break this down a little bit. You have an unfortunate situation. You have a report from a media outlet, and they are citing unnamed, anonymous sources. And then you have the president saying this simply didn't happen. So how in the world are we, regular old everyday citizens, how are we supposed to determine if this really happened or not? Well, I have a system that I use, and I would recommend it to you as well. If you decide just on face value because you're a Trump supporter or you're a Trump hater, well, then I guess having a system or really making any attempts at finding out the truth, that really doesn't matter. But here's what I do. And again, I will recommend this system for you. First, I search to see if other media outlets, other news outlets have picked up the story. And if they have, are they just repeating the story? In this case, it was published in the Atlantic. Are they just repeating that story? Or have they sought to gain independent verification on their own? So did they reach out to their sources and their sources said, yep, we absolutely heard him say that. So number one, I'm looking for separate independent verification. Number two, I'm asking myself, does this sound like something that the accused, in this case President Trump, does this sound like something that he would say? Is there anything in the past that we could look at and we could glean about whether or not he has a belief system that matches the allegation? So those are the steps that I would go through. Step one, look for independent, separate verification. Step two, can I find anything in the history of this individual that leads me to believe that he would say something like this? So let's start with number one. Has there been other independent verification? The answer to that is yes. In fact, as far as I can tell, at least 3 other news outlets have reached out to their own sources, and those sources have confirmed that they have firsthand knowledge that this happened. Now, it helps that one of those news sources is Fox News. And Jennifer Griffin at Fox News, she reached out to her sources and she said she got absolute confirmation. Now, because of this, President Trump is actually obviously calling for her termination. Here is an interview with her and Neil Cavuto on Fox News.
Working his sources at the White House, I was working my sources, and we teamed up, as you saw at the top of Bret Baier's show, and our reports were straight down the middle, as always. You know, Neil, Deep Throat was an unnamed source. It didn't make what he said untrue. My sources are not anonymous to me, and I doubt they are anonymous to the president. But I can tell you that my sources are unimpeachable. I feel very confident with what we have reported at Fox. Not every line of the Atlantic article did I confirm, but I would say that most of the descriptions and the quotes in that Atlantic article, I did find people who were able to confirm, and so, I feel very confident in my reporting. Of course, it's always better when people come on camera, but you can see how people get destroyed when they get crosswise with the president and they come out, and so people are reluctant. They've seen the way the language that used to describe people and the way Twitter has been weaponized against them, and I think they just don't feel they need that kind of grief right now. But what they're saying, they feel very strongly, is accurate. They were there, and I'm a reporter, and it was my job to report what I heard.
So the question, has there been other independent verification? The answer is yes. And when Fox News is on that list, you have to believe that they really got strong verification before they're going to allow that to be presented, because their biggest cheerleader is, of course, Fox News. So number one, check it off. Yes, there has been independent verification. But it's not enough for me. I want to know, has this man ever said anything in his history that goes along these lines that would make you think that he believes that members of the military, that veterans who were killed, were suckers and losers? Is there anything else that we can glean from his past? And of course, if you have any kind of memory like I do, the first thing that jumped into my mind was his statements about John McCain.
He hit me. He's not a war hero. He's a war hero. He's a war hero.
5.5 years.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay? I hate to tell you.
So does this go in line with what he's saying, that those people who were killed in the war are suckers and losers? Well, he's saying that John McCain is not a war hero because he got caught. Does that follow the same line of thinking? Absolutely it does. If you get caught in the military, you're not a hero. He likes his heroes who didn't get caught. This is the precise line of thinking that matches up with the alleged statements that he made. Now, going way back in time when he said this, and by the way, he said it twice, more than a year apart. And before any of you go off on this tangent and you start saying, well, John McCain did this and John McCain did that and he caused people to die. And there's so many things out there. Most of them have been debunked. None of that matters, because he explains why John McCain is not a war hero. You don't have to go searching for other stories. He explains why he thinks John McCain is not a war hero. I like my war heroes who didn't get caught. Period. Stop. End of story. So it's not because of other things that John McCain did. It's because he got caught. That means he's not a war hero. Just like if you were killed and you're in a cemetery now, you're a sucker or a loser. This line of thinking is very consistent for Donald Trump. If you don't have good ratings, if you don't win an election, if you're not a winner, if you didn't come out on top, then you are not for him. He only wants winners in every sense of the term, whether it's surviving a war, whether it's not getting caught, even though your plane was shot down. That's the way it goes. And by the way, he said a similar thing about George H.W. Bush, about him getting shot down. So this has been a consistent line of thinking for this man for a long time. Now, again, going back in time, when this soundbite was first presented of him saying about John McCain, I like my war heroes who didn't get caught, I thought this was the end of Trump's campaign. I thought this was the end, because conservatives and Republicans they'll put up with a lot, obviously. But to attack war heroes, to attack every POW, because is he not saying that every POW is now not a war hero? I mean, that's what he's saying, because they got caught. Every single prisoner of war is not a war hero because they got caught. How else can you extrapolate that out? That's exactly what he thinks and what he means. I thought that when this came out, that would be it. That Republicans would drop this guy like a rock. But they didn't. And this is when I came to understand what President Trump meant when he said he could stand outside on Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and he would still have support. That people have been willing to look past every misdeed. Now, if you use the partisan reversal test and you ask yourself the question, would they forgive this exact statement from Joe Biden? The statement about war heroes, would they forgive that? Oh, come on. They would be out of their minds. But it doesn't matter. We've now excused so many things from this man that we're now forced to excuse everything. And he truly can get away with everything. This undying 100% support for an individual, no matter what they do, no matter what they say, is dangerous. This is how things turn very bad. You have to be willing to put your principles first. And when somebody on your side of the aisle does something wrong, you should call it out. Now, interestingly enough, way back when President Trump made these comments about John McCain, a Republican stood up and said, this is outrageous. A Republican leader stood up and said, we can't stand for this. That Republican leader, was it Mitt Romney? No, it wasn't. It was Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham went to Twitter, and this is what he said. Listen to this. Quote, at the heart of Trump's statement is a lack of respect for those who have served, a disqualifying characteristic to be president, end quote. A Republican stood up then, but that same Republican now refuses to hold this man accountable to anything. And I'm telling you, this is dangerous. You can like the president for the things that he does well, for the things where he matches your principles. But if you're willing to look past the most heinous of statements and ideas, that a POW is not a war hero simply because they got caught, and now the alleged statement that people in a cemetery are suckers and losers because they couldn't stay alive, how dare they? If we're not willing to stand up and say enough, then truly Trump can do anything. Truly, he can shoot anyone. We are the ones who give him that power, and he knows it. He knows he can pretty much say anything at this point and get away with it. The Republicans have proven that over and over again. And that, my friends, if you look back historically, is incredibly dangerous. Did he say these things? Of course he did. It fits perfectly with what we hear him say on a regular basis and what he said about John McCain. That's not even really the question for me. The question is, will you continue to support him? Will you continue to look past these things? Will you continue to give this man all power and all authority? Or is it possible that he's not perfect? And is it possible that he holds some pretty amazing, bizarre ideas? Think about it. And in the meantime, please take a minute and become a patron of this podcast. Look in the description of the podcast and become a patron. That means a donation of $1 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month, whatever you can do. We have 30 patrons right now. I'm trying to get over a mark of $300 a month just to cover my base costs. If you could come on board and help us get that just a little bit more, that would be great. And also, please remember to share this video, like it, comment, let me know what your thoughts are so that we can continue to spread fearless honesty across social media and so that we can realize how dangerous it is to give anybody, and I mean anybody, 100% die-hard support. That is not reality, and it is dangerous. So please think about that.